Hey everyone, welcome to the Future X podcast. Great to have you either listening in or watching. Matt, this is going to be a shorter podcast because it's really a very tight, specific topic, but it is timely. A lot of schools and senior leadership are thinking through it, and we just kind of want to shed some light on a couple areas of dark spots that we're hearing. It's a really good strategic direction some schools are heading in. It's just that some may be rushing into it without considering all the possible outcomes. Here's the setup. Costs are rising. Talent is eroding. So there's less and less talent, especially in the technology house, but across a lot of institutions. It's harder and harder to attract and retain talent, right? So some of the schools are doing something that they consider innovative, which is, look, if I can't attract and keep enough talent, and you can't attract and keep enough talent, and the school 20 miles down the road can't either, why don't we team up, share some of that talent, share some of the services, and still get through the day? So on paper, and strategically sounds good, especially if President Joe and President Matt and President Sarah get along. We collaborate, we're part of an association, we like each other, we think alike, and we're like, hey, we can work together. And we maybe introduce our chiefs of staff and some C-level people, and they seem to be able to get together and get along. So this could work. Okay, what's wrong with the picture? And what could go wrong that we want to draw attention to so that people can make sure they've considered it? There's some things that can go right, but then there's some things that can go wrong. Maybe let's start with the things that can go right. What are the advantages of schools coming together, sharing services, integrating and centralizing more and more?
I mean, the first is a cost-effective measure.
Yeah, so if I'm a CFO, I'm liking the idea.
I'm liking the idea. That's the one thing that it'll go out and say, hey, do managed services, we can save funding. The other is allowing for you to gain capacity and share resources among your peers or the folks.
Yeah, we talk about horses a lot, right?
Yeah.
So if you don't have enough horses in your stable, I don't have enough, but together we have just enough, that's a win.
And it's a funding element. How do I fund, more innovative things through this process? Mm-hmm. All three are very
good reasons,
viable reasons of that. And then also there is I would say standardization. You're standardizing best practices.
You do some things well, I do some things well. Hey, let's do them. Why should I do it poorly if you're doing it well?
And you can maybe even share your offerings among that consortium.
Absolutely.
That, higher ed is becoming is a very kumbaya kind
of
collaborative group of people, and and students maybe in a consortium where students can share courses and share opportunities. It's a really good opportunity.
So those and many more reasons would justify, hey, let's do this, or at least let's get serious about the conversation. So. Because short of M&A, which we'll save for another podcast, right? M&A strategy and all about that. Short of doing some mergers and acquisitions, this could be kind of a friendly way to do that. Those are the pros. What are some things we would want to recommend that boards and presidents be thinking about if they're considering some of these things?
Part of whenever you get into a group, you kind of have to follow the group. It's not your way anymore. Mm-hmm. It is a collective's group's way. And part of what, institutions have to recognize is being in a managed services, does it allow me to still have my autonomy to do very innovative stuff?
That maybe your school does really, really well.
Really well. And also the way you service your community and the way that you service industry might be different. You also want to be maybe slightly more innovative because it requires more innovation on an initiative that needs to be happening. I think what we've seen and we've been talking to some presidents is that they're getting handcuffed.
Yep.
They're getting handcuffed by the concept of a managed services. The concept of a managed services is really good.
But you mean when they're in it now, a year, 2, 3 years in, or they're part of a system, they're starting to feel like, I keep hearing a lot of no's.
Because the central CIO or the central, person who's managing, CFO is managing it. When you want to go and be more impactful in a different way, your strategies are different today than, before COVID. Mm-hmm. So maybe pre-COVID, you were maybe aligned to a lot of things. But today, you have to think about enrollment dropping for a certain set of cohorts or a set of offerings or maybe new
Or
innovations.
industry is making new demands.
Yeah, industry is making new demands. I think that's when you need to be able to say, can I, in this managed services, have some autonomy, some flexibility? And that is something that I think schools and presidents and leaders who are thinking about managed services have to really think about is, can it be created in a way that allows me to have some autonomy? Now, we're working with some Ivies, Ivy Pluses that have that among their own colleges because they're very powerful colleges. And we want to give them autonomy, but you still want to be able to share the right things at the right time, but not handcuff them to a model that isn't beneficial.
I think that's where it comes down to design, right? And alignment, because we're big into how do you, before you do any major transformation, any major change, how do you get everyone aligned first? Or even before a strategic plan is released every 3 to 5 years, how do you get people aligned to the plan so everyone's not shell-shocked? And I think that's where a big mistake happens is maybe President Joe likes President Matt, who likes President Sarah, and we decide we're going to team up and do this stuff. But did we talk to the people 3 levels, 4 levels deep? Because they know all the friction points of just running one school's operation. And Sarah's people know the friction points, and your people know the friction points at your school. But no one said, hey, what will happen when Matt's friction points and Joe's friction points and Sarah's friction points all end up in one decision matrix? You don't do that. You're setting up for a very uncomfortable situation. So getting everybody aligned, hearing all the voices is critical. You remember I won't say what town we were in, we were at dinner with the president, I don't know, 3-4 weeks ago, and she was talking about how she's innovative. She has all these wonderful ideas, and she's doing all these great things. But there's a central CIO who's locked the system down and said, no, I don't change anything. I don't care what this president wants. I don't care what that president wants.
And that president is impacted, but the actual system is impacted.
And the student.
And the student is impacted. And while they're the gatekeeper of managing the managed services and keeping costs down and when you're keeping that cost down, that's one thing. But then the opportunity to scale and grow.
Which was the whole reason we got together.
Yeah.
Right? The whole point was let's do more with better technology.
Yes.
But if the technology is locked down, because no, I can't give you access to that data. No, I can't open up that API. No, I can't allow you to plug in this new technology you found. Wow.
Yeah, so you're saving a lot of money and people, and that cost-effective measure is there. But the actual opportunity to scale and grow where that cost-effective measure wouldn't even matter, you're handcuffed.
Yeah. So some things we want to make sure for schools that are thinking about and talking about managed services or shared services. Number one, have you taken the time to get aligned, not just at the executive level, but hearing the voices of the entire staff of where the friction points could be in an interaction of that? And have you solved for that first before you do your integration? It's not that different than mergers and acquisitions where it could look great on paper, but if you don't integrate well, it's a disaster waiting to happen.
So the thing that I would add on that alignment is great. And a lot of times alignment, when you first do managed services, is around processes and technology. Mm-hmm. And if you think about the conversation around technology and processes in today's higher ed, it's stale. Mm-hmm. You're not doing innovative processes, and you're not having great technology that's innovative. Mm-hmm. Right now, you're not doing it.
Yeah.
So if your managed services on 2 things that are not innovative and not strategic, you're just sharing bad processes among it. Now, as you continue to think about managed services, it should be iterative. Every year you should be thinking about what do we collectively need to do differently. Like if it's a set and forget it model, you are going to be a forgotten institution. If you start to think about the long-term benefits of managed services, it's iterative.
Matt, one last thing I want to leave everyone with, and I'm going to ask Brandon, who runs our video production side, to cut in a moment here to a quick segment from the talk I think I did at the Alliance conference, where we talked about institutional DNA. It's like you're about to watch maybe a 1.5, 2-minute clip, and then we'll come back to us closing, of me talking about every individual has an entrepreneurial DNA. A lot of our research into that. Teams have a DNA. So what worked for one team and one IT department won't work for another team if they don't share that DNA. But it's true of institutional DNA. Watch this little quick segment, and then we'll close on the importance of people. Because I think you hinted on it earlier, Matt, that when you want to do something innovative, if the rest of your partnership isn't into it, you're in trouble if you're part of a managed services thing. Watch this thing on institutional DNA, and then let's come back with some closing thoughts. We talked about your DNA, team DNA, your boss's DNA. Do institutions have a DNA? They kind of do. Now, the default in higher ed is S. You can assume that most higher ed institutions operate more S-like, which is why we have a little bit of an enrollment issue, right? Which is why if enrollment's down 3%, we put together a plan to move it up by 1%, right? It's just that specialist. Like, look, could we come up with a plan to grow it by 20? Yes. But could that make the wheels come off? Yes. So we're not going to do it, right? But what tends to drive institutional DNA in higher ed tends to be the leader in charge, the president. They usually come in with one of these 4 behaviors, and then the incumbent organization either embraces it or overwhelms it. So an innovator president may come in, but if a lot of us specialists go, yeah, but not right now, we're not changing, we're not moving, then the organization still looks S. But if we embrace that innovator, then the whole institutional DNA starts to shift. All right, so hopefully that gets people's minds going like, wait, I wonder what our institutional DNA is. It's just something to keep in mind that this is just my closing thoughts, and then Matt, some closing thoughts from you is process matters. You talked about it. Vision matters. There has to be a reason to come together beyond, we're just trying to save some money. Alignment matters. We have to get aligned and stay aligned through the journey. And I think the big thing you'll hear us pound on is DNA matters. The wiring of the institutions coming together has to align, or you're going to at some point end up in a misaligned situation. Closing thoughts from you, because we love the idea of institutions coming together, but we just want to shed some light on a couple corners of the room that may not have a lot of light on it.
I mean, for me, the one thing is don't be handcuffed by a managed service model from the 90s. Mm-hmm. Create a managed service model that is dynamic, that enables new technology to come in, that you don't have one central office, handcuffing you because they're trying to save. And then don't look at the pennies when dollars are passing by you.
Right.
That's what I think people don't realize. We can save a lot of money by doing this together. But then you're losing out on the opportunity where you can actually thrive and grow if you're all willing to do something a little bit more innovative that you have.
So in summary, Matt, what I'm hearing you say is saving money is a good reason to start the conversation, but that shouldn't be the reason you make the decision. If saving money and being more innovative and allowing the organization to provide better service is possible, maybe now there's a reason to move forward. But don't do it for just reason number one.
If you think about why you do managed services, is to gain capacity. But if your capacity isn't enabling you to do innovative stuff, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
You're just saving dollars for human capital, when you really should be saying, how do I take that human capital and have trajectory in what I want to do on this campus? How do I serve students, faculty, alumni in a much more effective way? And understand that doesn't stop today. It'll continuously enhance yourself as you go. And that's when managed services become really powerful.
Awesome. Thanks for being part of the Future X podcast. We'll see you next time.